Well, welcome back to the Garden Experience podcast. We hope you had a great Christmas. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. If you're a repeat listener, welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about just a reflection of the year and how it's been starting our Garden Experience gatherings, how it's been, doing this podcast and all the things in between. But before that, I actually didn't think about this before I said it. I was going to ask everyone, Armando and Casey, what you guys did for Christmas, but at the time of recording this, it's not Christmas yet. So I will ask, what are your guys' plans, I would say. For me, I'll start. Just a small gathering with family on Christmas Day, and then on Christmas Eve, I'll be playing, I won't be playing keys. I will be running Pro Presenter.
Wow.
So I can go to sleep.
That's the first time seems.
It's been a while, for sure. But yeah, you guys, what are your guys' plans?
Casey, what are you up to?
My plans are pretty much the same, pretty relaxed with just my family. It'll probably just be my dad's side of the family who live in San Diego. And then, because my mom's side of the family live in Washington. And so whenever we do see them, we'll probably be usually Thanksgiving or summer breaks or something like that. So those are when Christmas days or, holidays get pretty pressing because we're we got to go travel 26 hours north to go to see them or whatever. But this year, just like many Christmases we've had previously, it's just with family. My dad's side of the family, his brother, his sister will come over with their family. My cousins will see them all, and then we'll usually spend the morning. It'll just be immediate family. So it'll be me, my sister, my mom and dad, my grandma. And then they'll come over for lunch-ish. We'll do presents, and then we'll just relax, chill out. I mean, sure, football will be on. Maybe, I don't know. So Sunday, I don't know. I don't watch football, but
I think they will.
I'm assuming they will. Football
it's a weird day to have to be a football player. I was thinking about that.
It is, yeah.
It's still probably about 6.5 hours for them, right?
Yeah.
3 hours. It's probably about 8 hours total. 3 hours pre, maybe 2 hours after.
Right.
I was like, that's what you're doing on Christmas Day, but you got paid.
Yeah, that's their. Well, I mean, if you think about it, sports will not stop for a holiday, like Thanksgiving. They'll play on Thanksgiving.
I mean, the NBA normally has games on Christmas Day.
Oh yeah,
too,
they
right?
do. Yeah,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, they have the Christmas special and all that stuff. But it'll just be with the family. Pretty relaxing. I didn't ask for anything for Christmas this year because I don't even know what I want. That's usually how it goes.
Before we recorded, I asked you, if somebody wants to give you something, what would you like? And you're
I don't even know.
No idea. Just don't buy me anything.
Just money.
Yeah, just a gift card. But
I was like, it makes sense because you were talking about if you get a sweater that
fashion
gives you,
and if it doesn't fit, I have to go return it.
Thanks for a sweater that I might never wear.
Yeah,
you even know my style. It's I mean, you both wear black a lot, so I was like, I want to buy you a black T-shirt.
Oh, then I'll wear it. But if you buy me a white T-shirt,
it's tough. Fashion can be hard. Yeah, but what about you, Armando?
Yeah, the 24th we're spending with Gabriel and Jessica.
Okay.
So our kids and my nephews, my nieces and my nephew, and then on Sunday we're spending with my in-laws. So they're coming out to our place. My father-in-law got some tamales from Mexico.
Nice.
So we'll be doing that. My wife's aunt said she was making a turkey and some ham. So it looks like we're gonna have a lot of food on Sunday.
No kidding.
And we'll eat good on Saturday evening. But we haven't decided yet what we're doing for church. I realized we haven't talked about it. I've been exploring different churches this season.
Yeah,
as we're getting ready to plan. So that's been interested.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point you're like, well, what church should we go to for Christmas Eve? So who knows? Might go somewhere by myself. We might go somewhere as a family. Or we might not go somewhere at all and just spend it together as a family. So. We'll see. It's super strange.
Christmas Eve will be Christmas Eve is Christmas Eve services when it comes to church, especially being a musician who serves on the worship team. Often say the same thing for Nathan. I'm going to on Christmas Eve on the 23rd. I'm going down to TJ to play with Eastlake Tijuana campus.
That's awesome.
The 24th, be playing at Grace Church San Diego with Sal. So a lot of services, rehearsals. All that stuff. It's always pressing a lot.
Overtime.
It gets exhausting, but luckily that's why Christmas days are always super just relaxing and just like,
Thankfully,
I
yeah.
don't want to do much because I've did so much for Christmas.
I just
Eve
want to chill.
services.
Yeah.
Which is good. Yeah.
That's where partial we are because we're planting next year.
Yeah.
So it's like next year's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And the year after that is going to be crazy. And the
Yeah.
year after that, it's like, this is the time you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because it's a calm right before the storm. So the good storm, this is a good storm, but it's still like, we're planting a church. We're building what God has called us to build. We're building his church, his kingdom. So I'm super excited for that. And I have crazy amounts of goals for the year. Like I'm hoping to finish 2 books before the year ends. One of them I haven't even started reading, so I don't know how I'm going to get to it. But it will be John Maxwell 360 Leadership.
Yep. Okay.
I'm like, can I just crash through that? And then the other one is the nuts and bolts of church planting.
Yeah.
So I probably 2 lofty goals because at the same time I need to finish editing my book. So that needs to be done. I'm in chapter 4 or 5.
It's exciting.
Out of 8.
Yeah.
Or 9. Can't remember. I think it's 8 chapters with an epilogue and 2 appendices.
There you go.
Yeah. So
It's exciting.
I'm finishing that, and I got to finish that this year. So my goal will be to finish that before Christmas Eve, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, we're recording Wednesday already. So we're 3 days away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could do it. I just crash, wake up early, go to bed late. Play in between with my kids, and we'll survive.
Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah. But I'm excited.
Good.
Next year's going to be awesome.
Yeah, agreed.
But this year has been awesome too. This
Yeah.
year has been a year of growth. This year has been a year of new opportunities. And This year has been a year of possibilities. This year has been a year of character shaping. So I wanted to take some time for us and to just kind of look back upon 2022 and think about, obviously we started our garden experience meetings and we started a podcast during the process. So I want to look back and just reflect on what has been the lessons that you have learned and what has stood out to you and what has been like, man, this was a surprise, or here's something that I learned about myself as we did our gatherings or as we did our podcast. Here's something that I learned about myself. We started our gardening experiences because our desire was to pour into people so that they could flourish. And then we decided to, in our meetings, to do the same thing with this podcast. We were pouring ourselves out to each other and growing mutually. And we said, you know what, like this will help other people flourish. Yep. So this is how we ended up here today. Now reflecting back on how many episodes, Casey?
This will be 23.
23. Michael Jordan's the greatest player.
There it is.
Whatever. That's awesome. It's 23 episodes.
Really
that takes a lot of work. That takes commitment from both of you as well. So what has 2022 taught you? What have you learned? What has been like major highlights or major lows? Let's start with the good first, I guess. What sticks out for you in 2022?
Sure. I think a lot does. I think it's a pretty, that's a big question because I think a lot of things have stood out this year. I can say that confidently that I did not think I would be planting a church. I think Nathan can say the same as well. But that's where God's led us, and I'm excited about it, and I'm glad for it. Like what I've learned out of this process of preparing to plant the church and what that's going to look like in the new year. Like you said, it's been a lot of character building, especially because we're going to be leaders of the church and we're going to be leading people, and like who we are, like it matters. Like we want to be exactly what God's called us to be, and so we've got to bow our knee and just like let the Lord like chip away the things that are not of Him, and let Him help build character by leading us into opportunities and like church planting and like doing service and stuff like that, things that like I wouldn't have seen myself doing for this year, but I'm really glad that they have happened in reflection and hindsight. At the time, maybe I hadn't acknowledged, or I wasn't maybe necessarily so aware of what God was doing. But again, that's what really sometimes I think a lot of things in our lives, what we'll do is it's after we climb the mountain or after we begin our journey that we or maybe we're halfway through it and we look back and we reflect and we're like, wow, look what God has done. At the time I maybe wasn't necessarily aware of it, but wow, God's been doing a lot of things, and he really has. I could say for all of us, he's been doing a ton of stuff. I mean, like even, reflecting on the garden experiences, first, like, we started them back in April and we've done, I can't count, but 11 of them. And that's awesome. That's crazy. Like I would not have thought we would have done 11 gatherings.
It's crazy.
And to see, at every gathering, just like faces show up and people come and join us in worship and in prayer. And, it really has been an incredible journey. And, the process has been, it's super tough at times, but it's like, we've just been pursuing the process and like seeing how God's been working, letting him work within us and through us. One of the things, like even doing the podcast, like I wouldn't think I've always been interested maybe in like what would doing a podcast be like. Like I've explored it with Nathan and even Blake, if he's listening. We've explored it and thought about like doing a podcast, but it never panned out. We never did it. But I've always explored it, and so to actually be doing it now, like 23 episodes in, like that's just like mind blowing to me. Like wow, it's crazy that we've done 23 episodes of this. But that's been a extreme, stretch in my life, because I could say in, my previous experiences being even a leader, in some cases, and then even just being like a follower, like haven't used my voice the way I do now. And really began to learn how important my words are, like the things that I say, and like your voice is powerful. Like, it can hurt someone, but it can also, help people flourish, and it can add value to people. And so it's like, that's something I've been learning too, is like, man, like words do matter, our voices matter. And so like to be able to use it, get the opportunity to do it, like it's been hard too, because it's like, man, like hearing my own voice, just like what are the things that I'm saying?
That's the thing we like the most.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. But it's, that's part of the journey, part of the process is, learning that. And I thank God for it. I think like you for it. You're the one Armando, you're the one who stretched us to do it. I remember when we were first talking about doing a podcast,
I was like, no.
I was so torn. I was like, man, like
I wasn't torn.
Like,
nope.
Did I say yes to Armando just to say yes?
Yeah. I was like, do I really want to do this right now?
Because there was just a lot of uncertainty. It was a risk, especially for like someone like me.
Limiting beliefs too.
Yeah, limiting beliefs. I was just like, man, like, I mean, Nathan and I, we've released music and stuff like that in our past, and some of it's worked out, some of it hasn't worked out, and it's like we've seen the result of uploading and releasing content into the world, and how like we always set expectations, and that usually those are never met because our expectations are way out of like the reality. And so, I was like, man, with the podcast, it's not far off. You're just not singing melodies and stuff like that. You're
it's not 3 minutes.
You're using your voice in another way. And so it's just like, it was definitely, I was like torn by, but it's, I'm thankful for that you stretched us. And like, I know that I'm sure you listening, you've heard in previous podcasts how like passionate Armando is about, wanting people to flourish and wanting people, he wants to add value. He wants to help people become the leaders that they are. And I think that's what you're doing now. And it's been a stretch, but it's like, man, I'm glad. Like, I mean, we're 23 episodes in, like we're doing this, we're not stopping. And so it's definitely a learning process. It's definitely stretching me. And I think that's, ultimately what this season of the garden experience really has been, is just like a lot of character, like you said, it's a lot of character building. It's a lot of developing in order to help set us up for success for tomorrow, for when the church plants, even before the church plans, as we continue to do meetings. Like every time I think there's just something that's, that we realize that's like, wow, this is like successful, something new that's successful, something new that we tried, and something that's like, wow, like, it's working out in such fresh new ways. God's revealing how we should be doing services and all this stuff. And like, we're just continually growing and growing and growing and learning, because we've realized too, like leaders learn. So we're just always wanting to learn and wanting to grow. And so, I think ultimately, the reflection of this year has been, like you said, like, I think there's a lot of success in it. Whether, what my eyes see as success, maybe, maybe I haven't been aware of it, which is the importance of reflection. I know we'll probably mention that a lot today. Like reflecting is like, even something that we talked about today. Like we were just like reflecting
prior to the recording,
we were talking about like reflection on our year. And I was like, man, like I don't really ever do that often. Mm-hmm. But how important and how, useful it is, in order to be successful tomorrow. And so, it's just been like a lot of character building, a lot of, just growing. I've seen myself be stretched more this year than I have probably ever. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
I look forward to what's to come in the new year. And, there's been a lot of,
We're stretching.
Yeah, we are. And there's been a lot
We're
of
rubber banding right now.
Yeah, seriously.
Or actually building strength.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what they say, like, when you work out, you got to stretch as well to gain to create that tension, right? So you're creating that tension, so we're stretching to become stronger.
Yeah, and we really are.
I'm terrible at exercises, as you can tell by my analogy.
No, you're right.
It made no sense.
No, you're right. We are becoming, we are building strengths and becoming stronger to become the leaders that God's called us to be, and to begin to step in to do the things that God's calling us to do. And so it really is exciting. There's been a lot of downs too. Like I know
we'll get to some of that later.
Yeah, for
let's
sure.
Stay
But
in the up right now.
Yeah, of course. And so it's just been a crazy year. It's been but it's such a successful one. I definitely do think that so often we acknowledge the downfalls in our years, and we make those things prominent in our reflection, and it's like, well, because usually, that's just like humans are. We can make those things so loud in our lives when it's like, man, there's actually been a lot of good things too. Like, yeah, the year maybe hasn't panned out the way you wanted it to, but like reflect on it and see like what God's actually been doing in your life throughout the year. And like a lot of the successful things that, maybe they were small successes, but they benefit you now and to you heading into the new year. Like they're actually like, that was probably one of the bigger successful things, but it seemed so small at the time. Yeah. And so it's just very, it's very interesting myself beginning to learn how to reflect and what that looks like. How have I reflected in the past? How have I just walked into the New Year's only recognizing all the failures I had in the past year and just being like, well, hopefully this year can happen again. Like maybe I can do it this year. And it's like really not having, faith in myself, faith in like what God can do. And like, just like being a lot more like, just like having bolder faith, bolder like thoughts, like, this year will be better. Like this year is actually going to be a breakthrough year. And I do believe that for 2023, it's going to be a breakthrough year. Like there's going to be insane things happening that our eyes are going to like be opened, and we're just going to be like, I don't believe that this is actually happening right now, but it actually is happening. And so it's just like, I haven't walked into years like that often. I think I could say a lot for a lot of people too, is that like, that's not so, and we're going to go into that too in our next podcast too, is talking about like the new year and expectations and what that looks like and stuff like that. But
with disappointment.
And ultimately it's been a great year. I definitely say so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. What about for you, Nate? What have you learned? What stood out to you this year? What was really good?
Yeah, I think through all the character development, I think what really stood out to me, and it's like maybe not at the time, but now that I'm like reflecting and thinking about what I was gonna say as my answer to that question, I think like really just like how God sustained all of us, and me, all of us too, but like how God sustained me like really in this season. Thinking about like struggling with getting better with like spiritual disciplines, and like, days where I don't feel like reading and writing, and days where I do it a lot, whatever, like through all the ups and downs and through the like taking charge of developing myself. I think like it's funny to now reflect on all of that and see how like even at the time I didn't think about it. Like, we're starting a church, we're doing all this stuff and constantly worrying about, is God going to bring us the right people? Is it going to pan out the way we want it to pan out? And then thinking about it now, like, well, we're here, like we're alive and like we're doing good. And, so I think the thing that really stood out to me this year was how God sustained me. On top of, like how, he's used my like discipline to develop my character. But yeah, it's been a lot of reading, which I didn't think I was gonna do after graduating. After you rewrite papers and you graduate, you're like, I'm good. Like I don't need to do this ever again. And then now, wanting to better myself and wanting to develop myself, not just in my faith, but also like as a leader and all that. It's like now I'm reading a lot more, which I didn't think I would be doing. Like I'm journaling all the time, which I didn't think I would be doing. But yeah, I think definitely character development, like we said, but for me, character development and like God's sustenance, just keeping us going.
It's good.
That's awesome. For me, one of the big things that I've really enjoyed has been seeing both of you grow. So anyone that has been on this journey with us for these 23 episodes, I think you've noticed how Casey and Nate have both grown. I think for you, Casey, specifically, one thing that you've noticed about yourself is that you do possibly have a gifting when it comes to speaking, which is something that you never thought about before. And it's something that you actually even stepped into out of garden experiences. So for me, seeing that being stretched out, you stepping out and leading our intro, you stepping out and leading our prayer time for people and speaking from your heart what God's putting in you, like that has been really, really good to see. Wow. And for you as well, Nate, because you like to hide behind things, as you've mentioned in our podcast before. Like if you could be hiding and no one can see you, you will be very happy. Yeah. But at our experiences, you step up to the front. You step up to the plate. You give us the announcements. You do benedictions. So seeing you both stepping out into places you never thought of has been really good. And I think for you, Nate, one thing that I could say specifically is that you're finally believing that there is a calling in your life that you need to step into. I think for a long time you've been like sitting back on like, okay, I know God's called me. Yeah, I know that God's gonna do great things in my life. And now I think now you feel that tension of like the pull of like, let's do this, Nate. I'm calling you. And that's partially why I think you feel that pull of prayer, that pull of journaling, because it's God just drawing you to like, this is the time. So for me, that's been a joy to see that. That's been one of the highlights for me, just to see the growth that you both have gone through. Yeah. And what God's doing. Wow. I've grown as well in this. When you launch your own thing, when you do your own thing, you're kind of discovering who you are as well, in a sense of like,
very true.
Like, I've preached at other churches before, but normally you kind of adjust to the style of that church because you're trying to match that church as you're also being yourself. So at Eastlake, I knew that I had to preach at Eastlake style. At DRCC, I knew that I needed to preach a style that fit more with who they are. Right. At other places where I've preached, I'm trying to match who are they. So you're launching this thing and you're trying to discover like, who am I? Like, how are you going to preach now? Right. How are you going to be you? So there's been some interesting wrestling and discovering and fighting with myself of like, okay, one, like I had a statement in one of my notebooks that said like, if it doesn't hurt, it's not worth sharing. Like, and sometimes it's like, it's good. Like, I've shared stuff that I probably never share in some of our messages. Because, like, one, I'm just being honest. Like, wrestling with who you are and with your journey of faith. And just being honest about that. Like, hey, like, the whole Columbine massacre shooting, when I asked a question, like, if they were to ask me with a gun to my head, if you believe in Jesus, I would be like, no. Like I want to live. I want to experience life. Like because I realized that Jesus wasn't my thing. I didn't understand who Jesus was, or my prayers. Like in the last message on Christmas, I shared that like some of my prayers were not really about God. They were all about things that I would have liked to. That would have led me to getting lost. Like I know that. Like there are things nowadays that I thank God for. That he didn't give me. One of them is a music career. Because although for years I had said that I was doing it to plant seeds, I knew what was hiding deeper inside my heart, which was like, I just want to go be free to and just like live like however the hell I want to. Have no one tell me anything. So in reality, it's like you're not trying to please God. You're trying to just live this prodigal son lifestyle. Luke 15, like do whatever you want, and God's still there. God's job is to forgive me anyway, right? Like which is super messed up. That's a misunderstanding of grace. But that's what I was almost functioning like. So being able to share some of that stuff that like I never have openly shared any message prior to this. That's been kind of cool to like discover. Seeing someone give their life to Christ. At our meetings. It's incredible. And becoming part of our experiences and walking with us towards the future. That was awesome.
Seriously.
Seeing Nathan Concepcion and Salvatore Sal come and join us and lead worship out of the goodness of their hearts, and that's been
incredible,
unexpected, and such a blessing to see. And then of course, like with the TGE, the garden experience, comes a prayer garden, and you guys just stepping up and leading that, and opening your heart to what God has planted in your heart to start sharing with people. That's been awesome. To see some big lessons that I've learned. Like one of the things that, like lessons that we've talked and discussed before, we talked about in the podcast, has been like, never despise the day of small beginnings. Because it's too small right now. This is like, sometimes it's a lot of work for what seems like little fruit. But one of the things you mentioned to me earlier prior to recording was like, hey, I was listening to John Maxwell, which we'll be discussing soon in January, on the 17 laws of teamwork. And you were saying, like, he was talking about how, success it's like your actions that you did today led you to success in the future. And the actions that you did not do, or that you did do that were not right, led you to the failure as well in the future. Like today is what you're building towards the future either way. And it's like, that's the same thing with never despising the day of small beginnings. It's like everything we're doing right now is going to lead to a future harvest. And this is the time where we're learning how to sow the right way, so that we could get the 30, 60, 90, 100-fold harvest that we desire to see. So never despise the day of a small beginning.
That's so good.
I also learned this, bro. We took risks.
We did.
If you ever have to wonder once again if you're brave, we took a risk this past year. We started something. And we not only just started, we committed to making it happen. We committed to seeing it through. We committed to we're not just quitting because we got less people than we expected. Oh, we're just gonna quit because it's harder than we thought. So we committed and we stuck to it. And we're learning from it. And we're growing from it, both on the podcast side of it, and on the experience side of it. So, what do you think about that? Like, bro, you took risks this past year.
We did take risks, and I think that they were actions that's leading us towards success. Because I can say for myself, like, I love to see results. Like, I love to see results, and I think everyone can say the same. Like, we love to see results, and so, but sometimes, and I think oftentimes, that necessarily isn't the case when you start, like you mentioned, don't despise the day of small beginnings, because this is the truth is, you do something like what you do, success, like your success today may not show today, but same goes with like the harvest. Like if you plant a seed, you're not going to just see a harvest in the next hour. Like that's just not going to happen. And so,
depending on that seed, it
may take years.
But what is it? Bamboo, right?
Bamboo.
Michael Todd's favorite thing. Bamboo season.
Bamboo season.
How long does it take to grow the first time? A feet of the ground? 4 years?
I think
something like that.
I don't remember the exact times. I just know it's like exponential. So
it's like 4 years, 5 years, something like that.
It takes so long to get to the first like inches, but then after
the threshold,
it takes a few days
explosion
to explode, and that's and it depends on like the seed. Who knows, like, and God will always make sure it's when you plant that seed that it's not premature either. Like He'll always make sure it's going to be in His timing, and so it's up to us. Like, man, do we keep watering the seed? And that was what you're explaining with the garden experience. Like we're going to keep watering it. We're going to keep we're going to keep planting the seeds, and we're going to just keep going. Like we're just because the first gathering had 10 people doesn't mean we're like, oh, that doesn't mean it's not like we didn't say, oh, it doesn't work anymore. Like no, we're like, well, the truth is that don't despise small beginnings. Like there's so much significance to it as well. Like we learn so much about ourselves, and we begin to just see how God actually used that first gathering we had in April. Like it was pretty incredible. It was insane to see people come, people I haven't seen in a long time, and just to see how God was working and using the worship team and as we prayed and as we just gathered and like as we ate and we're just community. Like there was so much, like there's a lot of significance to that, and that's something I'll definitely will always remember even as we move forward to planting the church. Like that was an important day for us.
And that's an important message, by the way. Like that message might become the first message we ever preach.
Yeah,
at the church we do.
Yeah.
because he talks about how following Jesus is an adventure. And what does that mean? It's actually the same message I preach at Converge. As crazy as it sounds. Because there's an invitation of like, what does it mean to follow Jesus?
Yeah.
And what is he calling you and inviting you and I to do as we do that? So who knows? It might be the first message we preach.
Seriously, yeah. Stay tuned. Yeah. It's been, but yeah, the year's been definitely, a lot of risks, a lot of
and
things.
it wasn't recorded, so,
Sure, yeah. Yeah, seriously, it wasn't. But, like you said, how do we feel about the risks? And I think that I'm learning to love, and enjoy taking risks, or like, be willing to have courage, to have the strength to take risks, because, as we're on this journey with Jesus, I think a lot of things we do are pretty risky. And that's just how, like, I think, as we follow Jesus, that's how it is. And it can be very interesting. And it, many times, we're going to be set apart from what everyone else is doing, and, we'll be criticized. We'll be, people ask us questions. People wonder why'd you quit your job to go do this? Why'd you stop doing that to do this? Like, and it's just like, well, that's what the Lord's led me to. So that's what I'm going to do, because I want to obey God. And I know that what God has in store for me is better than what I was doing myself without God. Yep. And so it's just like, and it can be risky things. And sometimes, the risk, planting the church, I think that was extreme. Like, it's just risky. Like, we had no idea what we were going to do in the first, our gatherings. What was that going to look like? How are we going to do it? How are we going to shape it? How are we going to do worship? How are we going to do this? And it was like, man, it's risky. Are people going to come? Are people going to we want to plant a church. Like, are people going to be invested in it? How are we going to do? Like, I mean, even as we continue to develop the process and God begins to like reveal His plans and begins to like lead us in the right direction. It's like, man, there's a lot of things. Like, man, we need people. We need fundraising. We need like support. We're looking for like buildings. Should we set? Like, it's just a lot of things that are just like, man, it's pretty risky. And then there's other things that's like, we're doing a podcast. Well, it just like, it doesn't seem like maybe there's as much risk to it, because it's just like, you just do the podcast and you upload it, and you're just like, okay, God, here's here you like, we want you to use this for your kingdom and your glory. But it's like still risky, because it's just like who knows? Like, people gonna listen to it? Like, what? Like,
should we be spending this time doing something else?
Do we waste?
Do we waste time? Right. Like, or what? And so it's just like, but of course, I do believe that, as you go along the journey, and as you pursue the process, and you follow God as He establishes your steps and stuff like that, like, there'll always be little miracles in the midst of your journey that like affirms the direction God's leading you. Like, we see people, how it's our podcast is like reaching people, and like how people like, we're getting feedback, and it's like, man, like, that's a miracle. Like, that's God telling us, like, just keep going, keep doing it. Like, you're doing what I'm calling you to do. You're doing what I've been leading you to do. To see people come to our gatherings, and see people how it's affected people, and how it's, people have encountered God at our gatherings. We had like someone's life saved, like salvation this year, and that's like, we haven't even planned to the church. Like, we were just doing a gathering, and it's like, that's just a miracle. That's just like God working in the midst of all of it, and then just like Him affirming, the direction we're going. I know, like we've said it before, is like, even Converge, like we've talked about Converge before, like how they want to, they're going to partner with us, and we're going to plan with them, and it's like, that's a miracle. Like, we're not crazy. We're not just like going out on a limb. Like,
we're not on our own either. Just winging it and hoping that it succeeds. It's like, no, we're getting coaching.
Yeah,
we're gonna get resources.
There's so much. There's a lot of there's a lot of great things that will come out of it too, and so it's it's oftentimes we won't take the risk because of it's a risk, and it's because we make assumptions of what the outcome on the other side will be. If I do this, then people aren't going to like me. People are going to say this about me. If I do this, then it's probably going to fail in the first week. If I do this, it's like, nah, it's not worth taking the risk. But like, oftentimes, I think that, out on the other side of the risk, even if it doesn't pan out the way that you want it to, what you are going to learn and how you're going to like develop from it is then going to set you up for success for the next thing. And so it's...
Amen. What you're learning today prepares you for tomorrow. Yeah. Like, the risks we took have taught us lessons. Like, we have to be better at communication. Like, we have to promote this out.
Seriously.
Who knew that you invite people and they tell you, I'll be there, and then the time comes and they don't show up. Only doing the risk tells you This is how it is. And it prepares you for what's to come in the church.
Yeah.
Which is like, hey, there's going to be disappointments. And how you deal with disappointments is part of the process. So, because it means that you have to keep the vision and the mission
Right.
more up front than your
That's
feelings.
right. That's right.
Because your feelings don't guide you. So this is like,
That's right.
that's been part of the lessons we're learning. Like, it's like, you often say it in the podcast. I forget how you say it, but it's something about feelings. Like,
Don't let your feelings override your calling.
yeah, don't let
Or
it's
feelings override your
that
purpose.
kind of
Yeah.
It's that kind of like you have to learn that in the moment because there's no pretty sayings that don't mean jack until you're in it.
So true.
Right? Like
So true.
It's so awesome. Like God is faithful. He's so true. Yeah, tell me how he's been faithful in your life. Tell me how he's been true. Because if he has been faithful and you believe that he is, there's gonna be consequences in your life.
Yeah.
There's gonna be circumstances in your life that show he's faithful.
That's right.
That show he comes through. Like that's where we are right now, right? With the church plan.
Exactly.
Like we are raising funds. Like in 2023, we're dropping the church name
Yeah.
by faith in the name of Jesus because
Yeah.
we're still debating it up till today.
Yeah.
Like December 21st or whatever it is today, we're still debating it. Like,
Yeah.
but we know it's coming.
Yeah.
And it's part of like, okay, God's been faithful in the past. We know he did it before. Then we know he's going to do it again. I am so like in this conversation, I was like, dude, that should be my second point for my Christmas message. It should have been obedience is risky.
That's true.
Because I talked about how God is in the upending of our lives and how
Yeah.
Mary and Joseph being obedient led to the upending of their life.
Yeah.
I was like, dude,
risky.
that's the second point. If you preach this message, when you preach this message again,
Not kidding.
obedience is risky should be the point.
that's
Like,
good.
here's one thing we learned. Yeah.
Seriously.
But you listen to us, you might be thinking right now, like, okay, how does this affect me? You might be at a crossroads right now where you need to make a risky decision and you are afraid of making it because you don't know the consequences of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If God has called you to do it, obey him. Is it risky? Yes, I just told you obedience is risky.
Yep.
Look at Mary and Joseph. We're just a day after Christmas. Saying yes to God meant saying no to a lot of things, like having high honor in a society that value honor, like being respected, like people treating you with kindness and respect, like people welcoming back comments from people because she was pregnant prior to being married. So, Joseph, did you mess around with her or did she cheat on you, Joseph? It meant you having to understand that for the rest of your life, you were going to have that following you. But that obedience paid off
Yeah.
1,000-fold, more than 1,000-fold. You can't.
Yeah.
That obedience paid off in the Son of God being born through Mary, and Joseph being his earthly father.
Yeah.
Like it's, what can you say? Like no wonder Mary's like, I will be favored from here to like eternity. Like that God would give me such a gift.
Right.
Like, yeah, that God would give you such a gift. And so if you are at a crossroad right now and you're listening to us, obey God. It's risky. Yes. It's scary. Yes. There's no guarantees. Yes. You're right. You're afraid. Yes. But guess who's with you? God. Every single step of the way. So
That's right.
that's what we're learning right now.
That's right.
It's literally what risks is teaching us
That's right.
as we're going through this.
Yeah. What about you, Nate? How's the risks been this year?
I mean, I don't like risks. I mean, who does? You know, like not to trample on everything we just said, but it's like honestly, like
That's true.
It's just like who likes it? It's not comfortable.
Apparently, I do.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, but it's been interesting. Like taking certain risks, like starting the church. Even this is like funny because to some people it might not be a big deal, but like even risks like diverting my time from something to something else that will benefit me. You think, duh, like who wouldn't do that? Why wouldn't you do that? But it's like when you're comfortable in something, it's tough. And so it's like shifting time throughout my day to sit myself in front of a computer and produce music after, like we were talking about earlier, before recording, like Casey and I had already tried music twice. And it's like, before the podcast, we were like, do we even do that? Because it's like, we've experienced what it's like releasing content, and we've experienced the disappointment when like what we see doesn't match what we want. And so we're like, why would I try it again a third time? And it's like, okay, well, reflecting on the fact that God has called us to do this, God has called us to do music, whatever. And then it's like, okay, well, now I have to take a risk again. So it's like, should I divert some of my time throughout my day to do music when I feel
do something that might fail?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, even risks like that have shown me like God still like moving. And it's just so interesting because we did a lot this year. We did a lot of gatherings. We did our podcast, but it's like this year hasn't taken off. I'm sure for many people, the year hasn't taken off the way you want it to take off, right? Like, we said, it's like back, I forget when you first contacted us, but like when we started our gatherings in like April, and we were like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to plant a church. Me being like, oh yeah, God called us to this. I'm like, our church is going to be like here, and it's going to be like a done deal by fall of this year. Like, we keep saying we're going to plant in 2023, but I'm like, I'm believing God's going to make it happen like now. And then it's like, it didn't happen. And it's like, okay, but I still took the risk, and it's like, we're not quitting.
Mm-hmm.
And
we're learning.
Mm-hmm.
So like, right. Yeah. We're learning it. And so taking some of these initial risks and the little risks in between throughout the year have shown me like how much of it is actually my faith. How much do I think, like, am I really hearing from God? Am I really obeying God? Or am I just like, is it just like am I volunteering God for something that he didn't say he was going to do, kind of thing? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, oh yeah, God, like, we're planning a church, God's going to take care of that. And God's like, that's not what I want to do. At least not that way. Like, I'm trying to do it this way, but you're not listening to me. And so I think the taking the risks have shown me even like which risks I've taken before that were like of God and were not of God, because like now we're developing ourselves, and I'm learning to like hear God and be with God more. And so it's just like how much of what I'm doing is actually in obedience to him, and how much of what I'm doing is just like me doing what I'm doing and saying that it's like I'm obeying God. So it's been a lot. It's been a lot of just like introspective like time with myself, and just thinking about is this like what I should be doing? Realizing there are things I should be doing, like taking time to better myself in leadership and my faith, that sometimes I don't feel like doing. And it's like, you're like the risk of, and it's so weird to say, but the risk of reading your Bible. Like a lot of Christians, including me, would think like God's not going to do it this way, or like God, I don't feel like that's really going to happen. What God said, it's not really going to happen. So why should I read, And then finding out like, just do it, just be with God, and seeing where that road has like taken us. Now here we are like 9 months later, and it's like, dude, it's just, I would not have expected my life to be like where it is, and for us to be doing what we're doing.
Yeah. And I think, even risks of like your prayers too, because like when you pray, like, I think it is good that, a lot of times my prayers are pretty risky, because, I'm believing boldly, and I'm believing that like the way God, split the ocean, like he can do the same way in some way now. Like it's just God hasn't changed. Like maybe some of the way that he will work out things on this side of eternity and on earth, like will look different. But it doesn't mean he's like any different. Yeah. And so, the way you pray, like it's been risky. And I think that I can say this year's my prayers have been more risky too, because, I believe that God will, like, what seems impossible to me, it's possible to God. But, I do think that, when you say like, oh, like, Armando enjoys risk, I do think that, I do think that, no, but
well, I'm gonna have to, I don't know if I enjoy it, but I'm up for it.
Right? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
and I think that people who are comfortable don't like risk. And that is really, the result of it is that like, man, for me, in my previous season, how comfortable I was with what I was doing. Yeah. I didn't want to take any risks because I was comfortable. I was,
I was alive.
I was complacent. Like, I'm getting, my financial support, the needs that I need, and, everything is okay and it's fine, and I don't want things to change. Yeah. But I mean, how often like God, like I think one of the part of it is too, is, why we take risks, as we follow Jesus and where God's calling us, oftentimes those things are risky, is because God wants to get us out of our comfort zone. He wants to eliminate the complacency in us, because that's how we're going to grow, and that's how we're going to develop into who he's calling us to be. Like, I really do think that's the only way that we're going to like exceed, and we're going to grow, and we're going to flourish into who God's calling us to be, is when we become uncomfortable. And how does that happen? By taking risks.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think that's part of, as we've seen over the course of this year, like we've taken a lot of risks and a lot of things, and like it when we say risks too, I do think, going back to my point of like praying risky, like, yeah, that seems small. Like, even if it doesn't like
seems small
happen,
if you, like,
or if it's like, it's just like,
you just started a small gathering at someone's house. That's
not that
it's
bad.
not risky. Yeah.
Like, you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, just like you preach.
Yeah.
Right. You write a message
pray.
every time you need to do one of these things.
Invite people.
Yeah.
Like, and all of a sudden you realize, like, never despise a day of small beginnings.
Yeah.
It's all a lesson towards the future.
Yes.
Yep.
It's all teaching me how to be the best me I can be. 5 years from now, when everything is kicking and alive,
Right.
and going. Like, if I don't go through the process now,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get it later either. So I could delay the process by not doing anything now and wish for something else.
Yep.
Or I could get in the process, get going, learning the process, and see that God's making it fruitful because I'm being a good steward of the talents He's given me. Like if you're talking about learning and growing, like, I love learning. Like, I want to be, my secret prayer constantly. My wife knows this. Like, I told you guys, I don't know much about Messi, so I watched 3 videos.
Yep.
Right, on his life and why he's so great, why he's considered the GOAT. And I prayed. I was like, God, I want to be great. It has nothing to do with being known for me. It has to do with, like, I want to know that I got to be everything you called me to be. I want to know that when I preach, it was my heart being poured out.
Yeah.
That when I led, I was leading with your best intentions at heart. My heart. Like, that when I served people at church, I did it to see the kingdom come. And I did it with all that I am. Growing, shaping, not saying I've settled because I'm good. I think this is good enough. I think I've, it's like, no, I want to grow. I want to, if you say, I don't want to get to heaven and be like, oh, you intended for me to do that as well? Wow. Well, I sure changed myself because I didn't think I could. It's like, so for me, it's like, risk is about becoming everything that God has called us to be. This is why I think that first message I gave is going to become probably the first message we plan at our church plan. Because the whole point is following Jesus is an adventure of becoming. And we don't know what we're going to become until we follow him. And we'll be surprised on that journey too.
Yes.
Like the disciples had no idea all the great things that we're going to watch. Miracles, miracle catches, food being multiplied, Jesus walking on water, raising the dead.
Yep.
But then on the flip side, seeing their friend and teacher die a brutal death, finding great disappointment, Peter betraying Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, gosh, what highs and what lows.
Yeah.
But do you understand that these 12 men went out to change the world after that?
Yeah.
Yes. Like, that's the process of following Jesus. It's risky. Obedience is risky. It's just what it comes down to. And I'm down with that because I want to love God more. And I want to love you guys more. And I want to love you, listener, more. And I want to give myself to a worthy cause.
Yeah.
And I was listening today to a message by Tim Keller on generosity. We're in the season of generosity, right? So he was saying, where was I going with this? Money, he was basically saying money has the power to trick you. It makes you shallow, but it also makes you hollow because it makes you think you're better than people So like if you make a lot of money, you end up thinking like it's because I'm smarter than them. It's not that you're smart in that area, it's that you're smarter than people. It's not that you're better at making money, it's that you're better than people. It's the way you start saying it when you make a lot of money. And part of the shaping process for us right now, it's like this is when you detach yourself from the things that you think give you the ultimate value.
Yeah.
To attach yourself to the one who gives you the ultimate value.
That's right.
Yep.
This is where the whole character conversation we're talking about emerges from that sermon. It was like when the Jewish Bible talks about the day of wrath. It's like Christians, we always think about the end day judgment. That's what we go to when Christ comes back and he judges the world, right? But that's not actually what it's referring to. It's referring to like money can save you from the day of wrath. When your friends betrayed you, money can save you. When your heart gets broken, money can save you. When you get a diagnosis that you have cancer and you're about to die in 6 months, money can save you. Like, but a lot of people think that money is their fortified city.
Right.
That if I have money, I'm safe. When only the name of the Lord is a fortified city.
Yeah.
And he said the name of the Lord. It's what scripture says. Because the name represents character. So not just the Lord, but the character of the Lord. And then he went on to say, and who's God for us? He's the Father. He's our provider. He's the one that has the whole world in his hands. Every decision is in his hand. It's headed towards his destiny. Like, and that's what we're learning. Like, that's the thing about obedience, which is like my character's been shaped so that I could achieve greatness. The greatness of being who I've been called to be. That's really how we should be defining greatness. It's not being famous and standing out and being better than everybody else. If you can, be it. Like, I want to be the greatest speaker of our generation. That's my dream and desire because I want to impact a generation after me to go change the world for the glory of God. Because of what Christ has done in their lives. So I want to give you my best. I want to be the best at that. But it's not so that I could be known. It's so that I know I grew to be everything Christ called me to be. That's greatness. To be like Christ. To be shaped in the image of Christ. To love people. And Christ is the greatest storyteller.
True.
So make me a good storyteller, God. Make me interpret scripture like my Lord, Father, so that I could teach your people in such a way that they live inspired, that they live thinking about God and Christ, not about what I said, not about what happened, but about what you told them, God, through us, about what happened in our moment through us. And that's what we're learning. Because we get real out of garden experiences.
We do.
Like, I mean, I can't tell because I'm on the other end, right? I'm preaching, so what would I know? But we do get real. Like, at our last gardening experience, I had two people that were like, bro, that message was just like, man, can we talk about it? Because I just moved on, right? Like, we finished. I was like, bro, it's so good to see you.
Let's go eat. Like,
He's like, can we talk about this? Like, don't move on, bro. Can we talk about what you talked?
good.
And it's like, awesome. Like, they're going to leave here not thinking about what I said, but thinking about what God was saying to them. That's what we're learning. Like, how do we serve people in that way?
That's right. That's so good. You know, and I think too, you know, even on the other side of it, because there has been so many great things that happened this year, and I think I can say the same for all of us. Like, that's what we were reflecting on. But I think there's been a lot of hard moments too, and I think that's like, you know, as we speak on risk and we speak on, you know, what taking the risk has looked like, you know, has led to a lot of things where it's like, man, like the days feel low, and it's like, wow, like, man, you know, today's been tougher than, you know, it was yesterday, or, you know, I hope tomorrow's not as tough as it is today. And, you know, as I reflect on this previous year, which, like, it's so weird. I feel like I tie like 2022 and 2021 together because it's just it just felt like the season has been, because I do believe the season has been that long that I'm going through. Is like, you know, it started off in, you know, 2021 and then leading in 2022, and then like from 2021, like thinking, oh, this is what the new year's gonna look like, into like a whole completely different, you know, frame of how the year has been in 2022. there's definitely been, and I maybe I'm speaking for a lot of people too. Like maybe this year has been extremely tough, and I know like for like even like some of my friends and my family, it has been really tough. It's been unexpected, but I do believe that in the midst of all those things, as I reflect on some of the things that have been harder and tough, and like some of the days where it's like, man, like even for like the garden experience, like wow, it's tough this week, like just like the experience of it, like man, like taking the risk of like quitting the job that I had that was like I was comfortable in, and it gave me support, and also too like I was comfortable in it, and I wanted me to step out of that comfort zone, and wanted to eliminate the complacency in me so that I could grow and I could experience more that he had for me. Some days it was like tough, and I was just I was just like I hope the garden experience, like instead of like having that bold faith of like I can't wait till the garden experience explodes and becomes all God, it was just like I hope it does. I lacked in my faith. But ultimately, as I reflect on some of those days and because like you said, like, I mean, you were saying before the podcast, we were reflecting a little bit about like our own personal lives, and this does tie to our personal lives too as well. Like there's been a lot of great things in our personal lives and a lot of things that have been hard. It's just like, it's like the graph, like, man, like it's going to go up a lot of the times, and then sometimes it's going to go down, and the dips might go really low. I mean, talk about like, going back to what you said about Jesus, like there was times where it was just like, so there's just like he was going up this mountain, and it was just again hitting his peak, and then to die on that cross, like man, that was the lowest low he probably got to, and it's just like, man, that is like same goes for like all of us too, and like even for you listening, like there may have been like days or like even maybe now, because I do think that too, when you hit the holiday seasons, that's when it can just get you don't have you lost family members in the season, maybe you've even lost them now this year. Maybe it wasn't like a previous year, or
you're losing them in this moment.
You're losing us in this moment, yeah. I mean, like, and so it's just like even just thinking about that, like that is tough. That is a low. It's at times, I can say to myself, and maybe you guys can share too, like what it's like to like experience those things, and like what you feel in those moments, and how like maybe how like you reflect, on what the truth of God is in those moments, because when I do hit those lows, it's like it can be really hard to be like, God, I see you working in this moment. I know that you're with me. Because, oftentimes we're just like, our response is like, why does this have to happen? Why is this happening to me? Why am I suffering?
Or why does it always happen to me?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. How often I've responded that way too. And it can be so tough. But I think, in my own, personal experience, a lot of the time when you get past the season, or you get, you start to climb up that mountain again, it's like, reflecting on it, it's like, wow, that did happen so that the glory of God and the glory of God shined through it for his glory, for his kingdom. And, I do believe like on the side of eternity, like, man, like, I mean, even like my own experience with my grandfather had dementia, and he was bedridden, like he couldn't do anything on his own. And it was just like, man, why do I have to experience this? Like I say the same for my whole family. It was just like, why do we have to experience this? And really, I don't think we'll get that answer until we hit the other side of eternity, and we are with God, with them, with my grandfather, like, being able to like, the answers to be revealed, and like, but I know that the glory of God did shine through all of that. Yeah. And it's just like how God used that to shape us, and how God used that experience, for our success for the next season, and how it strengthened us. Like it's speaking on just like low, like when you hit your lows, like, it can be so tough, but I think that, it's like the hard, I do think sometimes people don't want to hear it too, that like, oh, just, like it becomes too spiritual, like, oh, just turn to God, turn to the word, like to the truth, of Jesus Christ, that he is.
Who are you going to turn to anyway? Like, let's not become spiritual. You're going to turn to something. You're either going to go binge watch a show, get drunk out of your mind, go do something stupid. You're going to either continue to dwell in your brokenness and negativity. You're going to turn to someone or to some. So you might as well turn to God. Let's just be honest about this. Yeah. Because we all do it, right? Like, in my book that I've mentioned, which is premise is life is kind of like a stock market. It just, we literally dots in the moment. Like this, that makes up your life. It's ups and downs. But if you focus and you know your vision, you know where you're headed, you have a purpose, you learn from the past, you learn from your hurt, every moment just becomes a dot in the trajectory of your life that could end in a great place.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I also mentioned in the book, I kind of lost it giving that other aspect. I'm like, man, what's going on with my brain today? What we were talking about
Lowe's, the graph.
before that. I'm sorry, listener. You could follow my train
Oh
of
no,
thought
just
that
talking about like what you're turning
to God, like
turning to
people being skeptical.
So it's a story. The book
Yeah.
is a story.
Yeah.
In one of the moments, the guy is struggling with the hurt of what happened to him, and he's just numbing away the pain. And that's what I'm saying. Like we could try to spiritualize it. It's like, listen, we all numb the pain some way.
Yeah.
Alcohol, drug, sex, porn, binge watching, video game. We're all numbing our pain some way. So if you're a Christian, the best thing you can do is just admit it. It's like, I am binge watching. I am doing this because I'm hurting in some way. And the last thing I want to do is turn to you, God, which is the actual thing I need to do.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you're going to pull through for me. Which is maybe what God's trying to show you.
That's right.
What's hiding deeper in your heart. Like you don't believe. This is what I'm trying to show you. This is why we're going through a hard time together. Because I want you to be deeper. Because I want you to know that you're loved.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned in the message of Christmas that you can listen at the Garden Experience Collection podcast. That Tim Keller mentioned that if we try to force God to work in our schedule, we will always feel like we're not loved. Because and it will be our fault. Because we keep putting God into our box saying, you got to do it here. If you don't do it this day, I mean, that you don't love me. It's like, no. My plan for you is perfect. My plan for you is for your good. My plan is for you to prosper.
Yep.
My plan is that I make sure that all things work out for your good. But it's my plan. Your plan for you doesn't lead you there. You think it does, but it doesn't. Because I love you, I'm walking this out with you. So until you come to learn that, you can't walk it. Until you come to see control. Like one of the things that I have here is like church planting, literally at the core is, am I going to trust God?
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah.
That's the risk of every believer. You have to come to that place in your life where you say, will I trust God over this? Will I trust my life over to God? And if I do, is it going to turn out well? I don't know. As a human. But I do know who God is because of what Scripture tells me.
Yeah.
Because of who Jesus is. And because of what His Holy Spirit says and does in my life. So, I'll entrust myself to you because you're good. But my human experience says, no.
Yep.
And I opened my phone just to get to Romans 5 because I could try to say from my memory, but it's not going to work out well. But you were talking about suffering and like asking God, like, why am I going for this? Why am I going through this, God? Why me?
Yeah.
And one of the things that Tim Keller points out in a lot of his books is that suffering deepens you, and that when you properly handle suffering, it actually leads to a deeper love. And it's true, because this is what Romans 5:3-5 tells us. He says, right, not only so, but we also glory or rejoice or exult in our suffering. That's the same word for glory, for rejoicing in our suffering, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. So this is like the craziness of what you're saying. Like sometimes we go like, why me, God? Why me? And God's saying, because it's leading to a deeper love. Because I love you. Because you matter. Because as you persevere, your character is shaped. And as your character is shaped, your hope deepens. And as your hope deepens, I pour out my love to you through the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
It's good.
So why, like, so all that to say, like, I know
Yeah.
I jumped on the Christian religious answer, but it's the only
But
answer.
no.
It literally is the only answer.
And I think you're completely right. like I said, I think that's oftentimes, maybe, we don't want to hear that answer because, maybe we're blaming God for it too. Like, why do we suffer? And it's interesting to think about too, how God will allow things in your life as well. For our benefit, so that we can grow into a deeper love. And it's like, man, the thing that he allows in our life may not be what we like, maybe something that's like we think, oh man, this sucks, like why is this even happening to me? But I do believe that when you do deepen yourself and your faith and your relationship with God, those low moments become, you begin to acknowledge the Holy Spirit in your life, and that in God and him, like you said, walking through the season with you much easier than like you said, because the truth is we are going to run to something. I'll admit myself too. Like there's often times when you're going through a season or you're going through a low, and you're like, I'm just going to run to the closest thing to me that will get my mind off it, that will numb me from what I'm experiencing because I don't want to face it. But
it's normal, like you're saying.
It is so normal.
We're
Yeah,
all
it's
doing
extremely.
it.
Yeah, it's
It's
extremely
hard
normal.
to. It's hard to get because it's hard to allow ourselves to feel.
Yeah.
Especially like for us, like we're not feelers. Like right, like on my Myers-Briggs, I'm a thinker. I'm intuitive. Like on the Enneagram, I'm an 8. Like feelings are not my thing.
Yeah.
Like I feel deeply, but like I think we talked about this privately. Like I have to use an emotional chart to try to open up the different descriptions of feelings, because the one feeling that I know that comes easy for me is joy and anger.
Yeah.
Like I know what anger feels like. I know what being happy feels like.
Yeah.
But what does it mean to be like? I know depression because I've been depressed, but like, what does it mean to be like content? And what does it mean to be like blue in some sense? I can't even tell you emotions. Like,
Yeah.
I'm struggling to
Right,
tell you
yeah.
emotions.
Not just joy and
I've
anger.
barely used them.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, it's the truth, and there is so much truth to, like, man, we should not let our feelings override our purpose, because oftentimes, I think, on this side of eternity, like, there's a lot of things that just don't feel good. I mean, when you take risks and you become uncomfortable, that doesn't feel good, because you want it, because your flesh and the intention of your flesh is just to be comfortable and just to, like, I want to just, like, feel like I'm laying on a bed and a pillow and I can just, like, do what I want to do and do what makes me feel good and all that stuff. And it's like, when we let our feelings override our purpose, we're going to miss out on what God wants to do through us and for us, and how He wants to take us from glory to glory. And so,
not to interrupt too much, but
Yeah.
I am, and not to oversell my book, but I am. The book that we'll release sometime.
Yeah.
In it, there was this really interesting realization as I wrote it, because you're talking about feelings right now, and I put it in the character, and the character asks a question like, what about if behind every feeling there's a belief system that's guiding me? Oftentimes, what we feel is composing story. It's composing the story that we're telling ourselves. So we start telling ourselves a story about why I feel this way, and why things are not going to work out for me, or why things always happen to me, and why do people always do this to me, and is my life always going to be this way? And all of a sudden, you realize that feeling is creating a story, is living within a story, and the only way to change the feeling is to change the story. This is, like, we return back to the same thing I've already said, but this is why we come to Christ.
Yep.
Because in Him, we have a new story. If you're feeling lonely, sad, and depressed, like you're not, like you don't matter, Christ tells you matter so much that I came and died for you. So that you don't have to ever wonder if you're lonely, because I never leave you. I said I'm with you till the end of the age. You never have to be down and depressed because you think you don't matter, because I'm proving to you how much you matter. Dying for you, so that you could be reconciled to the Father. Like, all of a sudden you start telling yourself the true story of the gospel, and your feelings change. You feel you're out of control. And the story is when everything is happening in your life that you can't control is because someone has done something to you. So now you're wrestling with the stories you've been telling yourself because being hurt by someone means you're out of control and there's nothing you can do. So now, unless you go to the gospel and say you're the God that controls it, you're the God that took the greatest tragedy and turned it into the greatest victory. So therefore, you could do the same thing for my tragedy. You could turn it into our greatest victory. Unless you're able to do that, you're going to continue to carry that feeling.
Yeah.
So when God does show you that feeling, it's because he wants you to go deeper into what belief is underlying it. What story are you telling yourself about that feeling so that you don't let your feeling override your purpose, so that you don't let your fear keep you from obedience.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things the downside of this equation of doing what we've been doing has been we face fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
In ways that we didn't think we were going to face it. Will anyone come? What are we doing? Guys, we invited so many people, but there's a lot of replies, but no one's walking through the door. There's been a lot of fear in that. And fear of where the provision's going to come from. What our partner's going to look like. We now have answers to some of these fears.
Right.
But this is why I said, at the core of this, church planting is about trusting God. It's you're choosing to trust God over your fear.
And, I think, feelings are important too, though. I don't want to, I'm not saying that
we're tripartite in our hearts. Remember, we talked about our heart, how it's a triangle composed with the mind on top, your thinking, then emotions in one side, and then your will on the other side.
Yeah.
That's what your heart is made out of. So feelings are important.
Yeah.
But they're not everything.
Exactly. And so, it could be, I think a challenge, I want to leave with everyone too, is just reflect on reflect your year that you have. Even if it's as tough as it is, if it's just man, this year has been awful. Whatever seasons you've been going through, maybe you're going through a lot of more lows than you have been highs. Still reflect on those things. I think that's something Armando's been challenging, even me and Nathan, is reflect on the year and reflect on the things that we struggle with, but also, reflect and, celebrate the things that are worth celebrating and the things that we're joyful about and that were awesome. Our garden experience, launching that and, doing podcasts and, doing music and stuff like that. That stuff is so great too. But even being
we wrote a song. We haven't released it, but there's a song.
There's music.
Couple, that's cool stuff, dude.
It really is.
A hint for what's to come in the future.
Exactly. Yeah. And to not also
a glimpse, not a hint, a glimpse.
A glimpse of the future. It is. It truly is. We can see it in the horizon, but to even reflect on the things that were tough and maybe a lot harder. The lows that we faced. There was a lot of as I began to learn how to reflect on those things, being able to just say okay, that was in hindsight, but I really did learn a lot from those lows that I went through. And, whether it was actually extremely hard or maybe it just was a little bump in the road or something like that. Still, there's a lot to learn from those things. And God's intention was for you to learn something in that season. It's not just so you can just go through something and just it just happened. There's a lot of growing and learning from those seasons too. And so that's a challenge I think for all of us too, is just reflecting on this year and being able to take what we can into the new year. And I think, Armando's been challenging me, Nathan, and himself too, how we can become the best leaders that we can become and become who God, step into all God's calling us to do and become who God's calling us to be. And that means, reflecting on the year and just saying, all right, what can we take into the new year? What should we do better in the new year? How did I take my failures? How did I take my successes? Did I let my successes detriment the success for the next day? Was it just oh, wow, my failures were leading me most of the year. And so, I didn't really have too many successes. It's just a lot of, I think reflecting is so important in our lives. Yeah. And that's something we're making important at the Garden Experience too, as we move forward with planting the church, even with our leadership team and stuff like that. Man, we want to be reflecting often because, it is going to help lead us towards, ultimate success and, a deeper relationship with the Lord, deeper relationship with each other.
And we turn our failures into lessons that help others thrive and grow.
That's right.
And help us not to commit the same mistakes.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Two more things quickly.
Yeah.
One of the biggest lessons when it's come to the podcast has been mindset matters.
Yeah, it's good.
What do you think about that? Like, what you think? We talked about limiting beliefs and our ideas of God. You know, when you think about that, mindset matters. What comes to you? You've been talking a little bit about that, Casey, but what comes to your mind, Nate?
I think it really is like, I mean, everything really stems from what mindset you hold when you're doing things, right? Like your experiences also influence what mindset you have when doing something. And so I think it's a big part of what we're doing. And I think what God's been doing in my life is he has been transforming my mind into one that is more open to doing things the way he wants to do them. Hearing, what God has planned for me, for Casey, for like us, hearing that through like, prophecy and all that stuff, it influences me to then want to box God into like doing things. Like I heard from God that he's going to do this, so it's going to happen this way. And God's like, no, like that's not exactly it. And so I think the last year really has been God getting my attention and taking everything, like stripping every distraction away from me in order to get me to just focus on him and understand that he's like my sole provider. So easiest thing we can think of is provision, like monetary provision. And so like God, I've been applying to jobs for so long. And then your mind goes to, like should I, God's called me to plant a church, but I know that doesn't mean don't have a job. Yeah. But then when you spend like the greater part of 2022 just applying to jobs, at first it was pretty aggressive, like every day for a couple months. And then as we got busier, it would be like 2 or 3 times a week. And then now it's maybe like once or twice a month. But like the mindset that I would have wrestling with, like, am I not trusting God? Am I trying to like fix my insecurity about like not being able to save and not having income? Am I trying to do it myself? Or is God like telling me like, I want you to have income so that you can go into this church plant like prepared, with some provision? And then it's like, it's funny because like I keep asking God and then I feel like he's not answering me in that specific realm, but it's like, well, I still don't have a job. And like I've applied, I even, a few of my friends who have been like working for so long, they have recruiters that they've set me up with. Yeah. Those recruiters have sent my resume out to like places. I haven't got a single call back. And so it's just like, okay, maybe God's like, he wants me to focus on something else. And so it's like having a mindset where I have to be okay with that when it's like,
which is hard.
Like
it's a risky thing.
Culturally, as a 27-year-old, I don't want to be jobless, right?
And you've also, it's not like you haven't applied.
Yeah.
So there's like
so
a pain there at the same time, like, what's going on?
And then, like after after like working wherever I've worked, and especially like working with Andy in his like staging company with Visual Trend, like you can pad the resume a little bit, right? So like adding things that I've been doing more recently and at least keeping my resume updated and then sending that out and then still seeing no hits. It's just like what am I doing? Am I wasting my time? Is this, or does God still want me to do this? And it's like, yeah. I think mindset is huge. I think perseverance and determination are the two things that God's trying to really bring out of all of us. But for me specifically, I can say those two things are like something that God's trying to unearth in my life, I should say.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Craziest thing, I think, for me, second thing, craziest thing I said all year in a message, probably that God would treat us like if we were the suffering servant, when there's only been one true suffering servant, which is Christ. That he will work backwards all of our pain, making it up like it never happened. That idea that God will treat us as true suffering servant, I've never heard anyone preach on that.
Sure. Yeah.
to the point that I was like, should I even say this?
Right. Yeah.
If I've never heard anyone say this, should I even
Is it
attempt
for a reason?
to?
Yeah.
How am I being, heretical here?
Yeah.
But man, I've been thinking about that a lot. Like the fact that God's gonna undo the pain. He will wipe away every tear from us. Even though we're sinful, because we're in Christ, He sees us as sinless, and therefore He works backwards for eternity long to undo the pain that we face. And it will be like it never happened. It will be much better for it having happened to us. For it had happened to us. I don't know the sentence there. I gotta have to go write that down. Yeah. But that for me was like, when it came to our messages, that probably was like one of the deepest things that I've always. Yeah. I just never thought about that.
That's so powerful.
So God sees you if you're hurting right now, because we talk about suffering here at the last minutes. We talk about mindset matters and determination and perseverance and try to figure out and that pain of the unknown.
Yep.
Some people will call this the Abrahamic call, where you're stepping into the unknown, trusting God, walking by faith, taking risks. But as we get closer to the end of the year, we want to let you know that we love you and we're for you. More importantly, God loves you and He's for you. Starting January 1st, we're doing 21 days of prayers. Yeah. And on January 8th, we're hosting our prayer garden. Yeah. Our prayer garden, here at Nate's house. We would love for you to join us, begin the year in prayer. Yeah. As we seek God for what He's going to do in 2023. The best is yet to come. I am so excited for what we will see. Will it be hard? Yes. Will it be worth it?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Look forward to it. We'll see you guys.